Okay, I can't figure out how to record this in a file that's manageable that can either email or text. So I'm going to do this on my phone. Zoom is just not going to work. But I create a buyer packet. In this buyer packet, I print out these 5 documents. I'm not going to talk about all 5. I'm going to talk about agency and buyer broker. I use agency to segue into the buyer broker agreement. I print these out so that they can sign wet signature in person. I do this on the very first walkthrough. As we're walking, before we walk through the first house, we go in, stand at the kitchen counter, and I go through this real quick. It takes literally a few minutes. I have every buyer client I've ever had has signed these documents. So it's never been a problem for me. And I'll explain to you at the end how you get them to do that. Okay, so I'm gonna start with agency real quick. Let me open this up. So agency, what is agency? It defines our business relationship, our buyer agent relationship. It even says it here in the document, relationship and representation, how I'm going to represent you, my duties representing you as a buyer. When you sign this document, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, I become your fiduciary. Fiduciary means I'm going to put your interests above my own. Typically, that comes into play mostly when we walk houses and the seller is not paying any compensation to me, right? Typically, right now in this environment, sellers are still paying buyer agents. That's going to change soon, but for now, that's still how it works. That buyer compensation, the buyer agent compensation is listed in MLS right now. That will change as well. But when we walk a house, I'm going to have a printout of all the property information, and that is going to explain my compensation on the bottom right corner. It's going to show it. If we both see that it could be 0, it could be 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever. Some builders will offer 4%. Whatever the compensation is, if it's not to our liking, you, the client, gets to decide whether we still walk it or not. You still might want to write an offer on that or not. That's entirely up to you, despite what the compensation says. And again, I'll talk about compensation in the next document. But for now, it just means that fiduciary duty means I'm going to put your interests above mine. We're still going to do what we need to do to find you a home. With that, there come certain duties. As your fiduciary, I have certain duties. Right here on line 10, line 10 says, as a fiduciary, I have duties of loyalty, obedience, disclosure, confidentiality, and accounting in working with buyers. Let me talk about confidentiality. Confidentiality means that I'm going to keep everything you tell me confidential. This will go well beyond our relationship. The end of our relationship is usually at the close of a transaction. When you buy your house, after we close, my fiduciary duties end, except for confidentiality. That will exist for the rest of my life. That's the only one that exists after closing. Okay. The next one I want to talk about is obedience. Obedience means that if you want to write a low offer, I might explain why it might be a bad idea, but I'll still obey you and write that low offer. The last one I really want to talk about is loyalty. I'm going to be loyal to you and only you. I'm not going to be loyal to your lender, the listing agent, the seller, the escrow officer, just you in the transaction. Okay. If that sounds okay to you, go ahead and sign down here. And this is where I will point, typically. If you're going to Zoom, that you can't do that. But I'll point to the line they need to sign and line 45 where they need to initial. And with that, I start to talk about the buyer broker. So I whip that out and put it on the counter, and I say, because I'm loyal to you, I'm going to ask you to be loyal to me. And so I have this, let me say that again. Because I'm loyal to you, I'm going to ask you to be loyal to me. So I have a buyer broker exclusive employment agreement. I'm going to ask you to be exclusive to me, just me as your agent. You're only hiring one person, and that's me. With that comes some responsibilities for you as a buyer. When you might see open house signs in your neighborhood, you might see a community you want to go check out, a new build community. Anytime you want to see a home, you might see homes on Zillow, all of it online. I need you to contact me in order to see the home, whether it's a new construction, whether it's an open house, whether it's a resale, whether that you might find online somewhere, whatever source you're getting. I ask you to contact me. If you don't, I may not be able to represent you, and you might have to pay 2 different agents. So just be careful and understand what you're signing when you sign it. So let me walk through this here. So it says here specifically on line 17, buyer viewings, I need to be with you at a new build. So if you go to a new build construction, a new construction site community, please call me and I'll make time to go to those homes with you. Same with open houses. All you really need to do at the open house is let the agent showing or hosting the open house that I'm your agent. You can give them my information so they can call me if that's what you need or if that's what they need. Otherwise, if you don't, I won't be able to represent you. The next thing I want to talk about in this document is compensation. So compensation today, and this is going to change in the next month or so, but today, compensation is still paid by the seller side most of the time. And it's listed in MLS. So as we walk houses, on the bottom right of the printout I give you with all the property information will be our commission today. That's going to change going forward. But for now, it's going to be an MLS, and you'll get to see whether or not you still want to walk that house based off of the compensation I might not be getting and what you might need to cover. And so right here, it says the compensation to me, the buyer agent, shall be up to 2%. Most compensation on listings today is at least 2%. Anything less than that, we'll have a conversation about as we're walking the house or at the end of that walkthrough, just to see if that's something you want to consider offering on. If we offer on it, you may need to pay a little bit of compensation to me. And it's usually the difference. So I put up to. So I need a minimum of 2%. That's what I require in order to represent you. If the seller is paying 1%, you only need to cover the difference of 1%, right? You don't pay me a full 2%. That's why it says up to 2%. If I'm getting 3% from a seller side, the seller, then I'm not going to ask you to compensate me for anything. This says right here on line 31, whichever is greater. So you're not paying me and I'm not getting paid by the seller at the same time. It's one or the other, and it's whoever is greater. Okay. And with that, if you'd like me to represent you moving forward and be your agent, please go ahead and sign down here. And that's it. If they refuse or they want to think about it, you have to let them know. Unfortunately, we can walk through this house, but unfortunately, the other homes we have scheduled for today, I'm going to need to cancel. I can't walk homes with someone who I don't represent and don't have any compensation agreement or buyer broker agreement established with. So if you're willing to change your mind, go ahead and sign. Otherwise, you can take these documents home, think about it, let me know, and I can schedule some homes to see or reschedule the ones that we had scheduled today. Typically, that's what gets them to sign if they ever have questions. I don't really ever have problems with it, but that's kind of how I go through it. If you have any questions, let me know.